Some evenings feel quiet in a strange way. Not peaceful quiet, more like the kind that sits in the room with you. You're scrolling through photos, someone smiling on a beach, someone celebrating a new job, a couple laughing in a kitchen, the kind of pictures people post when life seems to be moving forward. And for a second, something small happens inside. Not anger, not exactly jealousy either, just a feeling that's hard to name, a little tightness that comes and goes before you fully understand it. It's strange, because most people want others to be happy, at least that's what we say out loud. But there are moments, quiet and private ones, when someone else's happiness feels difficult to look at for too long. Not everyone talks about that part, but it exists, and it shows up in small ways. Sometimes it's a friend who stops replying after you share good news. Sometimes it's a relative who changes the subject when things are going well for you. Sometimes it's that subtle silence when someone else is glowing. No one says anything openly, yet the distance is there. Over time, you begin to notice a pattern in people, maybe even in yourself. Some people feel uneasy around happiness. Not loud happiness, not celebration at a party. That's easy to tolerate for a few hours. But the quiet kind, the kind that seems real, steady, lasting, that can stir something deeper. And the truth is, it rarely starts with the happy person. It usually starts much earlier. Life has a way of shaping how we look at joy. Some people grew up in homes where happiness was short-lived, where good moments were followed by disappointment, where laughter in the living room could suddenly stop because something changed, money problems, arguments, silence that lasted days. When you grow up around that kind of atmosphere, happiness can start to feel fragile, almost suspicious, like something that won't last. So when someone else seems genuinely happy, a quiet question appears in the mind. How long will that last? Not in a cruel way, just a quiet doubt learned over years. You can see this sometimes in workplaces. There's always that one person who seems calm, steady, content, not loud about it, not showing off, just okay with life.
And strangely, that can make others uncomfortable because happiness, real happiness, reflects things back to us. It shows us where we feel stuck. Not in a dramatic way, more subtle than that. Imagine two coworkers sitting in a break room. One talks about a weekend trip with their family, simple things, cooking together, walking outside, nothing fancy, but they describe it with a kind of warmth that feels genuine. The other person nods politely, but inside something shifts. Not because they wish harm on that person, it's just that the story quietly highlights something missing in their own life. And when that happens often enough, happiness starts to feel irritating, not because it's wrong, but because it reminds. People don't always dislike happy people. Sometimes they dislike the mirror that happiness creates. There's another side to this too, something people rarely say out loud. Some people spent years trying to be happy in the ways they were told to. Work hard, stay positive, build something stable, keep going. And maybe they did all of that, but life still moved in directions they didn't expect. A relationship faded slowly. A dream changed shape. Time passed faster than planned. When someone else appears happy, it can stir old questions that were quietly pushed aside. Why didn't things turn out that way for me? Not spoken, just felt. And feelings like that don't always show themselves clearly. Sometimes they come out as quiet distance, short responses, a bit of coldness that even the person showing it doesn't fully understand. It's not always about bitterness. Sometimes it's exhaustion. There are people who have spent years carrying responsibilities, worries, long days that blur together. When life feels heavy for a long time, happiness can start to look unrealistic, almost naive. So when someone seems light, calm, content, it doesn't always feel relatable. It can feel like they're living in a different world. And humans, in general, feel more comfortable around people who share the same emotional weather. If someone has been walking through gray days for years, bright sunlight can actually hurt their eyes at first. Another thing happens too. Some people learned early in life that showing happiness could attract attention they didn't want. Maybe growing up, whenever they felt excited about something, someone dismissed it, compared it, or made them feel small for it. So they learned to keep their joy quiet, low-key, careful. When they see someone openly happy, not apologizing for it, not hiding it, it can feel unfamiliar, even uncomfortable. Not because happiness is wrong, but because they were taught in quiet ways that joy should be limited, contained. There's also a deeper layer that doesn't get talked about often. Aging changes how people look at happiness. When people are younger, happiness feels like something ahead of them, something they are moving toward. But later, life becomes more reflective. People start looking back more often, thinking about choices, timing, people who drifted away, roads that were never taken. In those moments, someone else's happiness can highlight time itself, how quickly it moves, how quietly it changes everything. And sometimes, without meaning to, a person may pull away from happiness simply because it brings those thoughts closer to the surface. It's not hatred. It's more like a quiet resistance, a way of protecting the heart from comparisons that hurt a little. But here's something interesting that happens if you watch people long enough. The people who seem uncomfortable around happy individuals are often not reacting to loud success or big achievements. Those things are easier to explain away. People can say, well, they're lucky, or they had the right opportunities. But the kind of happiness that bothers people most is the simple kind. Calm contentment, the person who doesn't seem rushed by life, the person who laughs easily, the person who doesn't appear to carry resentment. That kind of happiness can feel mysterious because it doesn't rely on big events. It feels internal, and internal peace is harder to compare against. It makes people wonder about their own relationship with life, sometimes quietly, sometimes uncomfortably. And then there are those small social moments that reveal everything without anyone saying a word.
A group of friends at dinner, someone sharing that they've been feeling good lately, not perfect, just good, sleeping better, feeling calmer. There's usually a pause after that, a short silence. Some people smile genuinely. Others look down at their plates for a second longer than usual. That pause says a lot about human nature. Happiness, strangely enough, can create distance if people aren't ready to face what it brings up inside them. But something important is often misunderstood here. People who feel uneasy around happy individuals are not necessarily negative people. Many of them are thoughtful, observant, deeply aware of life's complexities. They've seen things that made them cautious about joy, loss, disappointment, time passing in ways that can't be reversed. For them, happiness isn't simple, it feels temporary. And when they see someone who appears genuinely at ease with life, it can stir curiosity mixed with doubt. How did they reach that place? Or sometimes, is it real? Because people often trust what they recognize, and if someone hasn't experienced that kind of steady happiness themselves, it can feel unfamiliar, almost like a language they haven't learned yet. There's also a quieter truth that people discover slowly over the years. Sometimes what looks like disliking happy people is actually grief that hasn't found words yet. Not dramatic grief, just the soft kind that comes from realizing certain parts of life didn't unfold the way we once imagined. It shows up when we see someone living a version of peace we once hoped for. Again, not resentment, more like a quiet ache. And human beings are very good at hiding quiet aches behind ordinary behavior. Short conversations, polite smiles, changing the subject. Life keeps moving like that. But if you spend enough time observing people, at work, in families, and long friendships, you start to see something else too. Those feelings can change. People aren't fixed. Sometimes the same person who once felt uneasy around happiness begins to soften toward it later in life. It happens slowly, often after time passes, after certain expectations fade, after people realize that happiness doesn't always come in the forms they imagined earlier. They begin to notice smaller things, morning light through a window, a conversation that feels honest, a quiet evening that doesn't feel lonely. And when that happens, their reaction to happy people shifts.
It becomes less threatening, more understandable, almost like recognizing a place they didn't know they could visit. There's something quietly comforting about that, because it suggests that our reactions to others, even the uncomfortable ones, are not permanent. They move with us. They change as we change. Maybe that's why the idea of people secretly disliking happy individuals isn't really about dislike at all. It's about timing, where someone is standing in their life when they encounter someone else's joy. If a person meets happiness during a period of loss, it might feel sharp. If they meet it during a calm chapter, it might feel warm. The same happiness, different moments in life. And that's something people rarely admit openly. But you can see it in the way relationships shift over time. Friends who once felt distant suddenly reconnect years later. Conversations feel easier. There's less comparison, less quiet tension. Just two people who have lived enough life to understand that happiness isn't a competition. It's something that moves in and out of everyone's story. No one keeps it forever, and no one completely loses it either. It just appears in different shapes at different times. And maybe that's why, if you watch closely, even people who once seemed uncomfortable around happiness often soften when they realize something simple. Someone else's joy doesn't take anything away from their own life. It just highlights what's possible in a given moment. Not a perfect life, just a moment where things feel okay. And sometimes that's enough. The interesting thing is that many people who once felt uneasy around happy individuals later become the calm ones themselves. Not loudly happy, not posting about it, just quietly at peace with certain parts of life. You can see it in their presence. They listen more, they react less. They don't feel the same tension they once did when others talk about good moments, almost like something inside them has settled. And when you notice that change, it becomes clear that human emotions are not simple categories like we often assume. Dislike, envy, discomfort, these things are often temporary expressions of something deeper, something more human, something connected to time, experience, and the quiet stories people carry that no one else can fully see. So when someone seems uneasy around happiness, it might not be about the happy person at all. It might just be a reflection of where their life is at that moment, a moment that, like most moments, will eventually pass. And somewhere along the way, without making a big announcement about it, they might begin to see happiness differently, not as something irritating or distant, but as something quiet, human, and fragile, the same way it appears in everyone's life, sooner or later.